Hi everybody, I'm just going to do a quick 15-minute video on creating a spring so that it maintains volume when it's doing its springiness thing, which rhymes. Alright, so I'm going to go into the create menu, and I'm going to start by just grabbing a helix, so polygon primitives helix, simply because it's essentially a spring. I'm going to translate it up. And I'm going to give it more division. So right now this has 3 coils. If I go into its inputs, I can go higher. So I'm going to go maybe about 30. You might need more, you might need less. It depends on the type of spring you're doing. I'm also going to change the height. Actually, I have it sitting where I want it, so I'm not going to change the height. Change the width, though, maybe a bit. Change the radius down just a little bit. And let me see, the radius could actually be just a smidge thicker, so let's go maybe 0.15, something like that. Cool. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to generate geometry from this. If I were to actually, if I had the radius a little bit thinner, so 1.5 is what I want though. If I had the radius a bit thinner, if I start stretching this out, you can see that the volume of the thickness of the spring geometry actually is scaling bigger and bigger. Not very realistic, obviously, so I want to go back and using the inner curve and the outer curve, so it's ideal to have parallel curves. So for this, I'm going to change the subdivision axes to 4. It just makes it easy to find where that inside curve is and where that outside curve is. Well, it might be easier to do. Let's see. So 4. There we go. Oh, what did I put? 3? Anyhow, so we're going to go and select that inside curve, and I'm going to go up to this convert menu, which is located under modify. Convert, right there. And we can take any poly edge and convert it into a NURBS spline, so which my mouse is right on. So let's just do that. And you can only do one at a time, so let me do this outer edge next and hit G. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe just temporarily hide this for now. And the thickness of that, that might be okay. You might find that's too thick or too thin depending on what type of spring you're going to do, but I'm going to do kind of a flat plastic type of spring, so maybe that's okay. Now if it's a little bit too much, we could always go back into that helix geometry, even though I've hidden it. Under its inputs, we could maybe change this, the width or the radius. So maybe the radius, instead of 1.4, I can go maybe 1.3. And that's going to change the distance between my inside curve and my outside curve. So for example, if I went 0.05, you can see how that's made it much closer together. But I think 0.13 might be okay. And you know what, I'm good with that, so I'm going to delete the original now, just to speed things up a little bit. I'm going to select both the inside-outside curves, and I'm going to go to the surfaces menu. And I'm going to loft between those two curves, making sure that I've set the output geometry to polygons, and I'm using general, quads, and apply. And the cool thing with general is that I can go in now and change the tessellation, or the number of edges that comprise the coil. So I'm just going to go and give it something like 500. That's pretty good. If I were to smooth that, it should give me a nice smooth result, which is good. If you need more or less, you can still go in and add that. So maybe 1,000. Is that crazy? It's not too bad. Alright, and then I'm going to extrude that. So under my polygon menu, or tab I should say, I'm going to extrude that, and just extrude that up just a little bit. Alright, so maybe about like that, and give it a couple divisions, just so that has a little bit more of a beveled edge if I were to smooth that. With 1,000 divisions, that looks actually pretty good though. I might not need to smooth that any more than that. But if I were to go in and smooth that, I would end up with a fairly nice little soft beveled edge, which is kind of good. So at render time, I could turn on redshift tessellation. Settings that will smooth it again at render time. So the cool thing though is if I just make sure level 1 smoothing's back on so it's fast, if I grab those initial those initial edges, I can go in now and scale these up and down. Whoops. What do I have here? So if I grab these initial edges, yeah, I can scale those up, scale them down. It doesn't really matter how much I scale them. I'm always going to be maintaining volume of the geometry, which is what I want. Now for some reason that's way above, so I'm going to bring that back down to the ground and change my pivot with the D key so that it's sitting at origin. It's a little bit better. Alright, it's not too bad. Cool. Next thing I'm going to do is actually select both of these guys, group them, label it, so I'll call this spring curves, if I can spell, group. We've got our inner curve, we've got our outer curve, we have our geometry, spring. And I'm going to select the inner and outer curves, and I'm just going to scale those up a bit to the maximum I might have it go. And I'm going to add in 2 nonlinear deformers. So under the deformer menu, we've got the nonlinear deformers, and I'm going to grab 2. So a bend and a squash. Whoop. And again, I'm going to be attaching these to the 2 curves, so a squash. What this will allow me to do is add in some squash and stretch. And if I were to be able to just go back, squash and stretch, and some bend with the curvature. There we go, bend. And again, as I do this, volume is being maintained, so nothing's going to get squashed or stretched, so it's going to look pretty good. I do want to change the curvature though, so I want to make sure that this is actually kind of curving out from the bottom. So if I curve this now, and I want this curve to kind of extend out and around, so I'm going to change the high bounds, there we go, and remove the low bounds for the bend. So it's only going to be happening now from the ground up, so it's going to give me some nice bend to that. And then what I want to do is something similar to the squash. So I have my squash factor, but I want this to squash and stretch from the bottom. So I'm going to go into the squash deformer, and I'm just going to shift this back using my X key. I'm going to snap that to origin, and I'm going to get rid of the low bounds and increase the high bounds, just so it's at the top of my, which is about 2, so about the top of there. So now if I add in some squash and stretch, it's going to all happen from the bottom, which is nice. Alright, and then I'm going to control this stuff. So we've got our translation. Now the cool thing with the translation is that that will translate along the curve. So if I were to bend this, so I've got my bend, and I go back to my curves and I scale this, that's going to translate that along the curve. So we get this nice kind of slinky effect with that, which is good. So So we want to control all this stuff together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little bit of a very simple control, maybe a circle. So create NURBS circle. Let me just put it up here beside my object. Rotate that 90 degrees. Zero it out. And just group it to itself. So we'll call this one Spring Control Group. And under that is obviously the spring control. And I'm just going to do some very quick set-driven keys on this. Well, we could just set it up through some math nodes in the node editor, but I unfortunately have to step away in a couple seconds, so let's do this quickly. So I'm going to go to my set-driven key, and I've got my translate y. So translate y. It's going to be controlling two things. It's going to be controlling the bend, so I'll do that first. I'm going to select the bend and hit the down arrow, because all of the attributes I want to key are under the shape node, which is basically the curvature. And basically I want actually X, so left and right, to control the bend of this thing. So let's see here. So that would be X in this case. Cool. And you know what? Maybe I want the pivot for this just to be at origin. So let me just move that over. I think it'll be a little bit cleaner to work if that's over there. Alright, so everything's zeroed out still, so that's good. Alright, so again, curvature and translate X. So I'm going to key that. And now I'm going to move this over. Let's do a nice solid, 6 maybe, 5, 6, 7. Let's go 7, 10. 10 to 10. 10's way too much. So let's go maybe 5 to -5. So 5, which is also quite a lot, but you know what, maybe that's okay. Once we add in our translation and all that stuff. Alright, so let's see. Back to the curvature. So that should be about what is in there? Bend 1. Actually, that's the node we want. So let me just grab that again. This is the curvature. So we're going to do this again. So let me zero that out. So key. I'm going to move this over 5 degrees. And we're going to move our curvature, maybe, let's go 45. Cool. Key that. And then we're going to go to -5. And we'll go -45 degrees. Nice and equal. Cool. So now we've got this controlling left and right. Now I want to maybe control it compressing and expanding. So that's going to be on these two keys here. So let's see here. So I'm going to key that, or load that, sorry. So the scale X. Translate Y is going to control scale X, so I'm going to key that. So this is going to go down, maybe 5, so let's go to -5. That's going to cause these guys to scale in to about the same. Now the thickness of this, I feel like it could just be a little bit thicker perhaps. Maybe it doesn't need to go that much down. Or maybe that's okay though. So what's that, 1.6? Let me key that. I'm also going to go back into my geometry, because I haven't deleted history on this. Everything's still connected through history. I've got my initial extrude. If I select that node and hit the T key, this allows me to go back in and change that extrusion. So I'm going to go and do that. So maybe something a bit more like that. But this could go down as far as you need it to go down. So maybe I will go and scale that down just a smidge more. Something like that. And then I'm going to key that. Alright, so that's the scaling it down. And then I'll go +5. And I'm going to expand it. So let's try and scale that up just a bit. Something like that. Cool. So now I've got my translation and scale. So we got this cool kind of springy effect. Boing, boing, you know, very, very springy. That's kind of fun. Now what we can do is have a little bit more fun too, and add in a little bit of squash and stretch into that too. Alright, so to do that, let's go into our bend. No, the squash one. So where are you? Squash handle. Squash one handle. And I'm going to load that as the driven. Oh, squash one handle is not what we want. We want to select squash one. So I got that over here. I can go to the inputs. It's a little bit convoluted, but there we go. So factor. Just going to key that. So that's the default. Now, is that really going to be the default? I don't know. I don't think so. I think maybe -5 should be the default. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be really squashing out, unless we had just a little bit of squash when it's down like this. So let's see. So -5. Is going to be kind of the lowest point here. So let's see here. So squash is going to, yeah, I don't really know if we really need any squash at that low level. You know, we could add just a very, very small amount maybe though. So like maybe 1. So I'm going to key that. And I'm going to go to +5, which is going to be our maximum. And we're going to set some limits so it doesn't go above or below that. And that's going to be, let's see, stretched out just a bit. Now our high bounds doesn't look like it's actually going high enough, so what's going on with that? There we go, it's a little bit better. Cool. Alright, so let's do that. Let's add just a little bit more. You know what, maybe the squash isn't the right one for this. Maybe instead, just because squash is actually, let me delete that. It's actually changing the height as well. So maybe instead of squash, let me grab both those two curves. And we're going to add maybe a, I don't know, which one should we add? Not a sine, not a flare. Maybe none of it, because I really don't think that's really doing exactly what we need. Let me undo. Maybe, okay, let's try just a little bit of this. So again, we got our factor, translate y. I'm going to go up to +5. And I'm just going to add in just a little bit, a tiny bit of some stretch. Oops, wrong thing. Tiny little bit of stretch. So something like that. Alright. Something like that. So let's see what we got here. Alright, so that, oh, I didn't push the key on the, let me just go a bit higher than 5 for this, so about maybe 6. And I'm going to go back to my squash handle. Just kind of scale that up just a smidge. So it's going to scale it, squish it just a little bit. Key that. Alright, so now we got this happening. Cool. Next thing I want to do is just throw on some limits. So I'm going to select that circle, go into its transformation node, and under limit information, I'm going to set translate y limits, which is +6 to -5. And then also x, which was 5 to negative 5. And we didn't really do anything in z, but for now I'll just go the same, just in case we add in an extra one. Let's see, negative 5, negative 5. There we go. Right, so now it's not going to go beyond those limits. Very cool. Cool. Let's see, let's organize this a little bit. So all this stuff is going to go under one group, which is going to be called the spring group. Do I have that already? I don't think so. Nope. And this stuff here is going to go under do not touch. Alright. Don't touch. We got some geometry. Cool. And zero that out. Now, you know what, maybe do we want to have some rotations here? Maybe we should do that too. So for this, we'll just use a connection editor. Connection is just going to be a lot faster. So I'm going to go into this controller. I'm going to also select the handle in this case, so the bend handle. And what we're going to do is connect the rotate. I think it's probably, well, let's see, so it's Y, rotate Y. Rotate Y to rotate Y. If I can find it, there you are. So this way, when I'm animating this and I've got some bend, I can also go in and rotate this around a little bit. The bend's gonna rotate through that. So we get a couple of different axes going on with that. So it'll just give us a little bit more freedom to do things. So that was Y. So I'm going to go in and lock down everything else that I didn't use. So lock and hide selected. That way, just the only thing keyable will be that. Cool. Alright. And that's basically the end of this recording. So I'm going to hide a couple things. Hide the do not touch. The geometry, when I'm animating, it probably would be a lot faster to animate with the geometry not there, only because it's being driven through construction history, which makes things a little bit slower. So when I'm animating just the overall effect, I know that my minimum, it's not going to start collapsing in on itself because I, meticulously, quotation marks, set that, so I can just go in and add that all here. So if I needed to start keyframing stuff, so I could start animating that. Maybe it's going to spring up, so spring really fast up. And just start bouncing around a little bit, so just key this. Oops. So where is it going to end up? Maybe about like here. Key that there. And we'll just go every couple frames. And I can just go into my graph editor. There it is there. So that's the Y value. So we can start manipulating this so that, it's like a sign that's coming to a rest. So it's going to get less and less as it goes across. Oh, sorry, wrong monitor. So let me do this again. So I key here, here, and I just keyed every couple frames. So again, what I want to do is create a little bit of a sine deformer. So we're getting less and less as we get closer to the end, where the stopping is going to happen. This will give me a nice kind of gradual losing of energy. Maybe. Let's push play and see what happens. Let's go 40. Cool. And you know what? If I want more or less, I could do that. So maybe I want it to maybe end here instead. Let's go all the way to 40. Let's keep going down. So I'll do this again. So let me go into my dope sheet. Just on a different monitor. Let's just minimize this a little bit. So that's up here at the top. So, and it's going to end down here. So again, every couple frames, first couple will be a little bit more space in between, just because it's a little bit slower. All right, and then what I can do is go into my graph editor. So I've just got this gradual curve going down, and I can go in and start adding this decreasing kind of sine wave. There we go, something like that. Let's see what we get now. Cool. And you know what, maybe it's too much, too little. I can always just go into my dope sheet again. If I can select the right one, which is this one right here. There we go. And let's see. So maybe I can go just a little bit slower with some of these bigger springs. Increase my timeline just a bit. Cool. And then what I can do too is maybe add a little bit more bend into this. So I got my high and lows working. A chart like this. So I can maybe start adding just a little bit of a decreasing kind of bend in this as it's going through its thing. Cool. Maybe we could throw in some spline. I don't know. Let's check this out. Obviously, just a very quick animation. Could be a lot more refined, perhaps. So tangent spline, and maybe I'll just do a little bit more overshooting and undershooting. Just make it a little bit more exaggerated. Oops. Make sure it doesn't go below 5 though. Maybe that's too much downward motion there, so let me just reduce that a bit. Let's try something more like this. Maybe the first one doesn't need to be quite as curved. Straight up. Cool. Well, you get the idea. Alright, so maybe I'll go really high there. and I could just go on, because it's not quite there, but I just feel like I need to improve that just a bit. Cool. So now we've got this kind of spring that works properly, maintains volume, and animates. Alright, and I'm going to stop the recording there. Hopefully this is useful.